I recently got this super detailed phoenix mold and I was wondering what to do with it. So, to bring the tail, the crest and the wings to life, I will be using some warm chameleon colors. Backing the surface with some baking paper, I started filling the body with the lightest color mix, taking care to reach every nook and cranny with my brush before moving on to the darkest mix, which I would use to highlight the extremities like the tip of the wings, the fancy head crest, and the trailblazing pillowy feathers of this magical bird. Then I used the third color to fill all the spaces in between and blend the colors into each other. Now my pigments aren't bad at all, but I learned through Lula's channel that there are some even better color shifting options out there. Go check out Nerd Goblin Art for more details. This project is a part of the Phoenix Friday collaboration, brilliantly organized by the Goblins Cave. Check out the entire inspired playlist linked in the description. I decided to fill my phoenix with clear 1:1 coating resin. I mixed it and put it aside to degas for just 5 minutes. Gave one last tap to remove loose pigments because this was clear resin and I didn't want floaters. The bubbles which had come up to the surface got taken care of with a heat gun. The challenge for this piece is bubbles trapped inside the surface details of the mold. So I didn't do my usual 10 minutes degassing for this mix and chose to pour the resin earlier in a thin stream into the phoenix instead so that the bubbles had a chance to escape while the resin was still very flowy. Let this cure for a day. My phoenix has cured and there are a few pigments which have come up to the surface. So let's pop it out and see how it looks. The light is coming from the other side, which means that the pigments are not completely blocking out the light. I suppose this would look more intense if it was black. It is a surprisingly clean casting, and because I've used this clear resin, this piece is very translucent. This is a success and this is looking so gorgeous with the light reflecting and bouncing inside as if it's on fire. It's absolutely stunning and the color gradient came out very well. As far as this flashing and these pigments, I'm going to take care of with a little bit of sanding. Because I was engrossed in my crafting, I just poured resin onto the sandpaper instead of water. Yes, this happened. I need to pay more attention. My hope is that all the loose pigments have diligently come up to the surface and that they are not spread throughout the mix so that this sanding solves my problem. Next, a little bit of cleanup for the edges to remove any extra flashing. Now I am going to create another phoenix using the same color palette with a light body color, darker extremities and a middle mix to bring it all together. This will be an interesting way to compare them and see how they differ from each other. This has become a little darker than the previous one because I could not replicate the pigment distribution exactly and the color shift is gorgeous. What I'm going to do for this phoenix is use a dark filling to make the color pop, for which I'm going to use some of the pigment dye and use the same steps and techniques to pour into the resin mold, keeping a thin stream to eliminate as many bubbles as possible. Resin surface tension is creating gaps in this design. I need to pull some of the resin into the tail and the thinner areas extending out from the body of the phoenix. Now we are going to let this cure for a day. Like my clear resin phoenix, this one also has some floating pigments, but it doesn't matter because the whole piece is opaque and it will not affect the look. Let's pop it out of the mold. Oh, that's gorgeous. This was also a clean casting and look at that color shift. It is so beautiful. This was an interesting way to see the difference between a clear body fill and a dark opaque fill. It really does make a difference as to how the pigments throw light back. Look, this one is definitely looking much richer and this one looks light and airy. Both have very different personalities and will be playing different roles, which brings us to the next part of the project, which is the making of the Book of the Phoenix. First, I will be casting the spine of the book using 1:1 coating resin. After I have mixed the equal volumes of resin and hardener until it's clear and flowy, and I have let it degas for about 10 minutes, I will add some black mica pigments to be consistent with the theme and pair it with the darkest chameleon pigment I used to color the phoenix tails. I'm mixing gingerly because I don't want to spill the resin. Plus, I want this to be an uneven, dirty mix. I'll be using this silicone book mold, which needs a little cleanup. I would have cast this in one go, but I want there to be a difference between the book's spine, the pages, and the covers. This technique is not the greatest and there are obvious overlaps, but I definitely do not want everything to be of the same color. Let's give this a day to cure. After the spine, it is time for the pages. Ideally, I would have liked to cast this with some slow curing resin, but I'm going ahead with this 1:1 to buy me another day so that I can make my collab deadline. The weather is cold and my resin is bubbly. Initially, the idea was that I would keep the pages clear, so that would not only give definition to the book cover but also let me peek into the contents of the box when it is being used. But I decided to add some fire to the pages to match the design theme. Realizing that shredding foil piece by piece would take forever, I added the foil as it were into the resin and then vigorously stirred the mix to break the larger foil flakes into smaller pieces and let it rest to degas. All the while aware that there was no way I would have a clear casting now. But I accepted it as a part of the visual texture for this part of the book. With the suspended gold flakes and the grooves in the pages, maybe the bubbles will make it look even better. We'll find out soon enough. Let this set for another day. It is time to prepare the cover. Now, in the scheme of things, this is the back cover again with 1:1 resin. The flakes will be visible when one peers inside the box, like a secret. I want the outer cover to look dark and fiery. First, I will use some black mica pigment and create a dark mix to pour into a ring around the cover. Then, to create the illusion of radiating heat, I will use some red alcohol ink. This is going to be a very subtle gradient, visible only when one peers into the bottom of the book. The center is almost clear, which is perfect because I need to embed my phoenix into this layer. Because this is a thin casting, bubbles would not be an issue, especially after I use the heat gun. The phoenix will be placed upside down, so I will fill the spaces between the feathers to reduce any chance of trapped bubbles when it is placed into the resin. I'm a little concerned that this is going to float up, so while I let this cure for another day, I'm going to find something to weigh it down. I can't believe I did this. This is an eco-resin piece from another unfinished project which I'm yet to sand and seal, and I used it. After getting proof of my poor grip strength, I tried heating the resin so that it would loosen the grip, but the problem is that eco-resin being porous has bonded properly with the epoxy and I probably need more specialized equipment to deal with this situation. I did consider letting this be. I have seen people using this kind of attachment at the back of their phones, so I could probably pass this off as a pedestal for my Phoenix Book of Magic by coloring it to match the existing color palette. But no, the Phoenix is looking awesome and needs to be saved. After a bit of sawing, I had a feeling that I could do it. I progressed little by little by heating the resin around the disc. Eventually I got some hot water. This would not only heat the resin but also get me out of hot water by wetting the eco resin, which grooves way more smoothly when worked on with water. Finally, I managed to free the Phoenix, but the edges were a little frayed and I had to now figure out how to cast the cover. Okay, so parts of the edge have gotten spoiled, but this needs to be completed. I don't think I can pop it back into the mold because now that the seal has been broken, there's a chance that it will leak, and I can't do any more repair work on this. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to dam the sides somehow, and I'm just going to fill it up. Yeah. I popped the half-finished book back into the mold and then sealed the sides with some black UV resin, paying close attention to the edges. I needed to do this because the vacuum seal between the book and the mold has already been broken. So had I poured epoxy directly into it, I'm sure there would have been some sort of bleeding and would have ruined the finish. I'm hoping to catch the edge profile of the mold with this technique because UV resin will set within a couple of minutes. The Phoenix is jutting out a little, so I will sand it down before we can cast the final resin coat for the back cover. The lip seems to be holding its form. Let's complete this with some coating resin, mica pigment and alcohol inks to create a hot, fiery background for our Book of the Phoenix. The resin is almost at the end of its work time. I'm just going to use a toothpick to give it a little swirly nudge and to complete the look. This is already looking spectacular. Now is the time to cast the cover and complete this book project. I want to create a little scenario of the phoenix rising from the embers. So let's start by setting the scene with these tiny stone chips. and let them set for a day because I don't want them to move around when I cast my other layers. Now, with the next step, it will make sense why I bothered to sand the back of my phoenix and why I cast it with clear resin. I want this to look like it was debossed into the cover of the book. I'm not sure if this technique will work, so I'm very curious. I will set it into a clear base layer, placing it a little above the scattered stone chips, indicating that it might have emerged from its depths. Then, to add the element of glowing embers, I will use some gold foil to back these chips. The chips are not tightly packed, so I'm hoping that the light will catch the gold, or fire in this case, peeking through the black flakes, making it look like glowing embers. I will also sprinkle a little foil around for added effect. We will let this cure another day. This composition is looking so beautiful that I am almost in two minds about creating the backing, which will be dark so that the phoenix can pop against it. I'm going to be using glitter in the background to give the piece a sort of positive energy even with the dark choice of colors. The die is cast. I hope it looks good on the other side. I will give a little direction to the background as a subtle detail. The effect will not be as pronounced as the back cover. Let this set for another day. Finally, the last layer to complete this book, which is also a lid for this box. I am casting this part with clear coating resin and gold flakes to match the pages of the book. This was the last step. We can put it all together after one more day of curing. thinking this debossing technique would look even better if the background was lighter. And the background of the book is very strong visually, and I could have used a toothpick to trace a phoenix directly into it. Just a thought. Hope this was a fun watch. Don't forget to check out the Phoenix Friday playlist linked in the description for inspired ideas by other artists. Happy crafting and have a wonderful day.